Your kind disgusts me. The words cut through the afternoon air like a blade. Officer Ryan Blake's voice dripped with venom as he slammed the teenager's face into the rough pavement. The crack of bone echoed. 16-year-old Malcolm, white, tasted blood and dust. Another dirty criminal crawling out from that black skin. Blake sneered, pressing his knee between the boy's shoulder blades. I paid for this. Malcolm gasped, voice trembling beneath the weight of the officer's rage. Sure you did, Blake hissed, twisting his arm. Lying's in your blood. A torn receipt fluttered across the parking lot. Beneath Blake's boot, a crumpled MIT acceptance letter stained with dirt. Phones hovered. 20 silent witnesses. Nobody moved. Malcolm's phone buzzed beside his head. Dad calling. Then, everything froze. Tires screamed. Doors burst open. Heavy boots pounded the concrete. Blake looked up. The smirk drained from his face. Whatever he saw made him stand, made him pale. Have you ever wondered what can make a cop look that terrified? Stick around. This twist changes everything. 30 minutes earlier, the world was simpler. The Riverside Mall shimmered with Saturday sunlight, a mosaic of chatter, perfume, and music. Malcolm White was just a kid shopping for his sister's birthday. In a bright clothing store, he held up a pink hoodie, smiling as he snapped a photo. Lily's gonna love this, right? He texted his mom. His phone buzzed, a reply from someone saved as NW. On my way, son. Be safe out there. Malcolm smiled. Always, he whispered, slipping the phone into his pocket. He paid for the hoodie, added a matching scarf, and thanked the cashier, a young woman named Amanda Fletcher. Your sister's lucky, she said cheerfully. These just came in yesterday. Malcolm laughed, his voice light, his guard down. She's turning 13, he said. Big day. Amanda smiled. You're a good brother. As Malcolm turned to leave, a sudden shrill alarm cut through them all. Not from Amanda's store, 3 shops down. Shoppers froze. A security guard's voice broke through the noise. Male suspect fleeing toward the south exit. The dispatcher crackled. Description? Black male, late teens, dark hoodie, backpack. Just that. Just enough to change everything. Across the mall, Malcolm, 16, polite, quiet, wearing a navy hoodie and a backpack, glanced up, unaware that a careless description had just signed a sentence. The guard spotted him. The only black teenager in sight. I've got eyes on a possible suspect, he said into his radio. Moving to intercept. Malcolm's phone buzzed again. Another message from NW. ETA 20 minutes. Love you. Malcolm smiled, typing back, love you too, Dad. He never got to send it. He lifted his shopping bag, walked toward the mall's glass doors, sunlight pouring across his face, completely unaware that the world outside was already loading its gun, already aiming its assumptions at him. Malcolm stepped into the sunlight outside Riverside Mall, the air thick with heat and the buzz of weekend chatter. He adjusted his backpack, checked his phone, and smiled at a text from his sister. Can't wait to see what you got me. He was typing back when a sharp voice cut through the parking lot. You? Stop right there. He looked up, startled. 2 police officers were striding toward him, one already gripping the holster at his side. Officer Ryan Blake moved like a man who had already decided the ending of this story. His partner, Jason Reed, followed a few steps behind, uncertain but silent. Me? Malcolm asked, his voice small. Don't move, Blake barked. Hands where I can see them. Malcolm's heart kicked against his ribs. He raised both hands, one holding the shopping bag, the other his phone. Officer, I think there's been a mistake. I said don't move. Blake grabbed his shoulder and spun him around, slamming him against a parked car. The metal burned hot beneath Malcolm's palms. Empty your pockets. I just bought now. Malcolm's hands trembled as he pulled out his wallet, his keys, his phone. Blake snatched them away and shoved him harder against the car. What's in the bag? A hoodie and a scarf, sir. For my sister's birthday. I have the receipt right. Blake ripped the bag open, inspecting the clothes like stolen goods. The pink hoodie fluttered to the ground. The scarf followed. He crumpled the receipt in his fist, tossed it aside. Anyone can fake a receipt, he muttered. Malcolm blinked, disbelief and fear flooding through him. No, please, that's real. The store clerk can confirm. Sure she can. Blake's tone dripped with sarcasm. He turned to Reed. Check his ID. Reed picked up the fallen wallet, flipped it open. Malcolm White, 16, Riverside High School. He hesitated, reading the honor roll sticker on the student ID. Top of his class. Blake didn't even glance. Honor roll kids steal too. By now, a small crowd was gathering. Shoppers drifting out, phones rising. 20 people, maybe more. None of them spoke. None of them stepped forward. Malcolm's face burned. Please, just check the security cameras, he said, voice cracking. You'll see, turn around, Blake ordered. Sir, if you just, I said turn around. The officer yanked him backward, slamming his chest onto the car hood. The impact stole the air from his lungs. Hands behind your back. Malcolm obeyed, trembling. I haven't done anything wrong, he whispered. Shut your mouth. Blake's voice was cold, mechanical. The world shrank to the sound of his own ragged breathing, the press of metal against his skin, the burn of humiliation. Mom's voice echoed in his mind. Always come home safe, baby. He was trying. God, he was trying. Blake kicked Malcolm's legs apart. His knee pressed firmly into the boy's back. The crowd murmured, but no one intervened. The sound of phones recording filled the silence, the digital hum of cowardice. Officer, please, Malcolm gasped. I have done nothing wrong. Shut your mouth, Blake snapped, patting him down rough and fast. Hands slid over his pockets, his waist, his legs, every motion filled with contempt. He unzipped Malcolm's backpack, dumping its contents onto the asphalt. Books spilled everywhere. A calculus textbook, its spine cracked from use, a binder of notes, and a folder marked MIT application materials. Blake crouched, picked up the folder, and flipped it open. Inside was the acceptance letter, the one that had made his mother cry with pride. The officer's smirk twisted into something cruel. MIT, huh, he said loudly, holding it up for the crowd. What did you do? Steal the acceptance letter too? A few people laughed, short, awkward bursts that made Malcolm's stomach knot. That's mine, he said softly. I earned that. Sure you did, Blake replied, tossing the folder aside. The papers scattered in the wind like broken pieces of his future. Someone in the crowd whispered, Jesus, is that necessary? But no one moved closer. Phones kept filming, eyes stayed fixed, and Malcolm realized that their lenses were safer than their hands. He wasn't a person to them anymore. He was a headline waiting to happen. Suddenly, a voice broke through the tension, urgent, breathless. Officers, wait. Amanda Fletcher, the store clerk, ran out of the mall, clutching her iPad. I'm the cashier from Style Avenue. I sold him that hoodie 10 minutes ago. Blake barely looked at her. Ma'am, step back. But I have the transaction record right here, she said, thrusting the screen toward him. See? Malcolm White. Debit card ending in 3948. Purchased at 2:43 p.m. Reed leaned forward, frowning. Blake, maybe we're following protocol. Blake snapped, cutting him off. Amanda's voice shook. He didn't steal anything. Please, just look at the footage. Step back now. Blake barked, his hand drifting toward his gun. Amanda froze, eyes wide. For a moment, she stood there trembling, then stepped back, tears filling her eyes. She didn't leave, though. She stood at the edge of the crowd, holding the iPad to her chest like a shield. Malcolm caught her gaze. Thank you, he whispered. She nodded once, a single tear sliding down her cheek. Blake's radio crackled. Unit 43, what's your status? Suspect detained, Blake said into his mic, requesting backup for transport. The voice on the other end replied, Be advised. Report says suspect may be armed. The words hit Malcolm like a bullet. I'm not armed, he shouted. I don't have anything. Blake's hand went to his gun again. Get on the ground. Please, I'm not. On the ground. The command roared through the parking lot. The crowd gasped. A few people screamed. Malcolm dropped to his knees, trembling, hands raised high above his head. Please don't shoot. I'm not resisting. Please. Face down. Hands behind your head. He obeyed. The pavement was hot against his cheek, tiny stones digging into his skin. The world blurred. His mother's voice echoed again. Keep your hands visible. Say yes, sir. Come home safe. He was doing everything she'd taught him. Every rule. Every step. And still, it wasn't enough. Blake holstered his gun, then dropped his knee hard into Malcolm's back. The air rushed from Malcolm's lungs. "I can't breathe," he gasped. "Stop resisting." Blake barked, "I'm not resisting." The boy's voice cracked, strangled between pain and fear. "Then stop talking," Blake spat, wrenching Malcolm's arm backward until something popped in his shoulder. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "He's a kid," someone shouted. "Check the receipt." Another voice, shaky but furious. "This is wrong." But no one stepped forward. No one stopped it. The crowd just stood there, filming a crime dressed as procedure. Malcolm's phone lay on the ground beside his head, screen buzzing again and again. "Dad calling." The name flashed bright for a moment, then dimmed as the call went unanswered. And in that awful silence, under the weight of a stranger's knee, Malcolm understood the truth. Sometimes, doing everything right still isn't enough to survive being seen the wrong way. The second patrol car pulled into the lot, siren silent, but lights flashing red and blue against the sun-baked asphalt. The reflection danced across Malcolm's face as Blake tightened his grip on the cuffs, yanking the boy up by the chain. Malcolm's shoulder screamed in pain. His knees buckled. "Stand up," Blake ordered, his tone flat, mechanical. "Please," Malcolm whispered. "I can't." "I said stand." Blake hauled him upright, metal biting into his wrists. The crowd had grown thicker now, 30, maybe 40 people, a sea of raised phones capturing every second. No one spoke. No one moved. Only the faint hum of recording. Sergeant Kenneth Graham stepped out of the arriving cruiser, older, heavier, his eyes narrowed beneath the flashing lights. "What do we have?" he asked. "Suspect matches the description from the electronics store theft," Blake said, still gripping Malcolm's arm. Graham scanned the scene. The scattered papers, the pink hoodie on the ground, the girl with the iPad crying at the curb. He crouched down, picked up the crumpled receipt, unfolded it, read the timestamp. "This receipt's from today. 20 minutes ago." "Could be forged," Blake muttered. Graham looked at him sharply. "Forged in 20 minutes?" Blake didn't answer. Graham's gaze moved to Malcolm, who was shaking, blood trickling from his nose. "Son, what's your name?" "Malcolm," he managed to whisper. "Malcolm White. I'm 16. I'm a student at Riverside High." Graham held up the boy's ID. "Honor roll? 4.0 GPA." He looked back at Blake. "You pat him down?" "Yes, sir." "Clean. Anything in his bag?" "School books, papers, college stuff." Graham straightened slowly, looking at the circle of phones, at Amanda with her iPad trembling in her hands. He looked at Malcolm again, a kid, terrified, humiliated, and something flickered across his face. Maybe doubt, maybe guilt. For a brief moment, Malcolm thought it might end there, that someone in uniform might finally see him. "Bring him in for questioning," Graham said. "Better safe than sorry." The words hit harder than the pavement ever could. Blake yanked Malcolm forward toward the patrol car. The crowd erupted in voices, protests, pleas, arguments colliding like noise. "That's racial profiling. He didn't do anything. Let him call his parents." But just as many voices muttered the opposite. "The officers are just doing their jobs. If he's innocent, it'll get sorted out." Two worlds clashing in one parking lot, and Malcolm was caught between them, invisible in plain sight. As Blake shoved him toward the car, Malcolm's mind spiraled. He did everything right. He remembered every rule his parents taught him. Keep your hands visible. Don't argue. Say yes, sir. Stay calm. Be polite. He had done all of it. And still, his wrists were bound, his face pressed against metal, his future scattered in the wind. The car door opened with a heavy click. Blake pushed his head down and forced him inside. The door slammed shut, a final, hollow sound. Through the window, Malcolm saw Amanda, still standing there, still holding his phone. The screen glowed with a single message, "Dad calling." She lifted it to her ear, tears streaking her face, speaking urgently. Maybe she was telling him. Maybe someone would finally know. The cruiser pulled away. The world outside blurred into streaks of sunlight and concrete. Malcolm stared down at the floorboard, wrists aching, shoulder throbbing, heart breaking under the weight of it all. His breath came shallow, slow. He closed his eyes. His mother's voice echoed in his mind again. Always come home safe, baby. He had tried. He had done everything she said. And still, as the car turned onto the main road, leaving them all behind, Malcolm understood something no teenager should ever have to learn. That doing everything right doesn't always save you. Not when the system decides you're already wrong. The Riverside police station smelled like burnt coffee and old paperwork, a mix of routine and neglect. Blake dragged Malcolm through the front doors, one hand gripping the chain between the cuffs, pulling him forward like property. The fluorescent lights were harsh, flickering slightly, making everything look colder than it should. Behind the front desk, Officer Nicole Harris glanced up, her expression tired. "Name?" she asked. "Malcolm White," the boy said softly. "But I need to call my parents. Suspected retail theft, Riverside Mall." Blake interrupted. Harris typed quickly, scanning the screen. "No prior record. Clean." Blake shrugged. "First time for everything." Malcolm's voice rose, trembling. "I didn't steal anything. I showed you the receipt." Blake leaned in close, his breath sour with arrogance. "Receipts can be forged. Witnesses can lie. So can criminals." The words burned. Malcolm's jaw tightened. "So can cops," he whispered. Blake's face darkened. "What did you say?" Before he could react, a new voice broke in, sharp, authoritative. "That's enough, Blake." Sergeant Graham stood in the hallway doorway, his tone cutting through the tension like a blade. "My office. Now." Blake glared but obeyed. "Reed, process him." Reed stepped forward, quieter, gentler. He unlocked the cuffs. The metal left red rings on Malcolm's wrists. "Come on," Reed said, leading him down a narrow corridor. The walls were a dull gray, lined with bulletin boards and old posters about community outreach that nobody read. They stopped at a small holding room, 10 feet by 10, a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, a blinking red light in the corner. "Sit tight," Reed said. "This'll get sorted out soon." Malcolm looked at him, disbelief in his eyes. "When can I call my parents?" "Soon, I promise." Reed closed the door. The lock clicked. Silence. The hum of the fluorescent light buzzed faintly overhead. Malcolm sat down, staring at the table. His shoulder throbbed, his cheek stung, his throat burned from holding back tears. He stared at the camera in the corner. "Is anyone even watching this?" he said softly. "I'm innocent. I didn't do anything wrong." Only the red light blinked back. The clock on the wall read 4:51 p.m. Outside, across the street, a black SUV idled. Its windows were tinted, its presence quiet but heavy. Inside, 2 agents watched the station's front door through a live feed. "We have visual," said Agent Victoria Collins, adjusting her earpiece. "Subject inside." Next to her, Agent Stephen Phillips tapped his tablet. "Director White's ETA, 8 minutes. He's seen the mall footage. All of it." Collins frowned. "How bad?" "Bad," Phillips said. "His kid got slammed face first into concrete. Knee on the back. The works." Collins's jaw tightened. "The officer?" "Ryan Blake. 2 prior complaints for excessive force. Both dismissed." She exhaled slowly. "Not this time." "What's the play?" Phillips asked. "We wait for the director's signal. He wants to handle it personally. If it escalates, we move in." Inside the holding room, Malcolm leaned forward, pressing his palms together. The camera light blinked in steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. He thought about his mother's talk. "You're black in America. The rules are different. You're twice as likely to be stopped, 3 times as likely to be arrested, 10 times as likely to be hurt. So be careful. Be polite. Come home safe." He had done everything right. He had smiled, complied, followed every rule, and still ended up here, trapped in a gray room that smelled like fear and sweat. His voice cracked as he spoke to the camera. "My name is Malcolm White. I'm 16. I'm a student at Riverside High. I have a 4.0 GPA. I got accepted to MIT. I bought a hoodie for my sister's birthday. That's all I did." His voice broke. "That's all." The door opened. Reed stepped in, clipboard in hand. "Malcolm," he said quietly, "we pulled the security footage from the mall." Malcolm jumped to his feet. "And—" Reed hesitated. "You weren't near the electronics store. You were in a completely different section." Relief flooded Malcolm's chest like oxygen. "So I can go?" "Sergeant Graham wants to finish the report first," Reed said, uneasy. Standard procedure. Malcolm stared at him in disbelief. Standard procedure? You just said I didn't do it. You have proof. I know, but then why am I still here? Reed shifted, uncomfortable. Look, I'm on your side, kid. But it's not my call. The sergeant needs to review everything, document it, then he'll release you. When? Maybe an hour. An hour? Malcolm's voice cracked with anger. I've been here almost an hour already. You just admitted I'm innocent. Reed's eyes softened. I understand you're frustrated. Malcolm let out a bitter laugh. Frustrated? I got thrown to the ground in front of 50 people. Your partner called me a criminal. He knelt on my back while I couldn't breathe. My college letter is scattered across a parking lot. And you want me to wait another hour? Reed said nothing. He just nodded faintly. I'm sorry, he murmured. Just be patient. He left the room, closing the door behind him. Malcolm sank back into the chair, fists trembling. He wanted to scream. He wanted to flip the table. But he couldn't, because that's what they expected, the angry black kid. The threat. The stereotype. So he sat still, breathing slow, forcing himself to stay small, quiet, invisible. And somewhere outside, in that black SUV idling across the street, his father was coming. In Sergeant Graham's office, the air was thick with unease. Blake stood at attention, jaw tight, eyes defiant. Graham sat behind his desk, scrolling through reports on his monitor. This doesn't look good, Blake. Blake crossed his arms. We responded to a call. The description matched. Graham looked up. Black male, hoodie, backpack? That matches half the teenagers in this city. I made a judgment call. Blake shot back. Graham turned the monitor around. The screen glowed with dozens of clips, Twitter posts, Instagram stories, TikToks, all showing the same scene. Blake's knee on Malcolm's back, the crowd yelling, papers scattering like leaves. Your judgment call is all over social media, Graham said quietly. Hashtag Riverside Mall is trending. Hashtag Justice for Malcolm has over 10,000 tweets. Blake's face flushed. So what? We did our job. Graham leaned forward. Did we? He slammed the laptop shut. The kid had a receipt. The clerk vouched for him. Security footage confirms his story, and you still brought him in. Blake's mouth tightened. Better safe than sorry. Or better scared than accountable, Graham muttered. He stood up, voice rising. You drew your weapon on an unarmed 16-year-old. You ignored evidence. You humiliated him in public. Do you understand what this looks like? Blake's eyes flickered. The optics are fine, he said weakly. Graham stared at him, disbelief washing over his face. Fine, he exhaled. I'm finishing this report, releasing the kid, and praying this doesn't turn into a lawsuit. Blake scoffed. He'll be fine, Sarge. Kit's Guckmet. This'll just be his wild college story. Graham's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. Get out of my office. Sir, get out. Blake left, slamming the door behind him. Graham sank into his chair, running a hand over his face. On his monitor, the freeze frame of Malcolm's terrified expression stared back at him. He couldn't look away. Outside, in the SUV across the street, Agent Victoria Collins pressed a finger to her earpiece. Director's en route, she said. ETA 4 minutes. Agent Phillips nodded. He's seen the body cam footage. It's bad. Collins looked grim. How bad? Damning. Blake's done. Phillips swiped through data on his tablet. Director's furious. Collins's eyes flicked to the station doors. He's also a father, she said quietly. Inside the holding room, Malcolm sat slumped over the metal table, forehead resting against the cold surface. The clock ticked toward 5 o'clock. Every second dragged like an hour. He thought about his father again. NW, the name on the text. On my way, son. He hadn't known how literal that promise would be. The red light on the camera blinked. Outside the station, tires screeched softly as a black SUV pulled to the curb. 10 agents stepped out in dark navy windbreakers, bold white letters across their backs. FBI. Collins led them, eyes sharp, movements precise. Positions, she whispered. They fanned out, flanking the entrance. Inside, Graham's phone rang. He hesitated before answering. Sergeant Graham. A pause. Then his eyes widened. What? When? How many? His face drained of color. Understood. He hung up slowly, staring at the door. He rose from his chair and murmured under his breath, almost to himself, "The FBI in my lobby? For a shoplifting case." Down the hall, in the gray holding room, Malcolm exhaled, his voice barely a whisper. "I just want to go home." He didn't know that outside, 10 agents were moving toward the doors. He didn't know that in seconds, the world would tilt, that everything, the humiliation, the fear, the injustice, was about to meet power face to face. The station doors swung open, and the air itself seemed to hold its breath. The front doors of the Riverside Police Station burst open. The sound wasn't loud, it was final. 10 figures swept inside, moving with silent precision, their navy windbreakers marked with bold white letters. FBI. Every head in the lobby turned. Officer Harris froze behind the desk. "Can I help you?" she asked weakly. The woman at the front stepped forward, her voice steady, commanding. "Agent Victoria Collins, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're here for Malcolm White." The words hung in the air like thunder. Harris blinked. "On what grounds?" Collins didn't flinch. "We don't need grounds." "Where is he?" Sergeant Graham emerged from the hallway, confusion etched across his face. "What's going on?" Collins held up her badge. "Special Agent Collins, FBI. This facility is under federal observation. Where is Malcolm Alexander White?" Graham hesitated. "He's a suspect in a shoplifting case." "He's not a suspect," Collins said sharply. "He's a minor under federal protection. You're holding him illegally." Blake stepped out from a side corridor, his tone laced with mockery. "Federal protection? For a shoplifter?" Collins turned to him, her eyes narrowing. "You're Officer Blake?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. We'll be talking later." Her voice was steel. "Now tell me where Malcolm White is." Graham's jaw tightened. "Holding room, North Corridor." Collins gestured to 2 agents. "Phillips, Stewart, retrieve him." They moved instantly, boots echoing against tile. "This is local jurisdiction," Blake snapped. Collins turned her gaze on him, the weight of authority behind her stare. "Not anymore," she said. "The moment you detained a minor without cause and denied him counsel, this became federal. Your jurisdiction ended the second you chose ego over law." She raised a tablet. "Would you like to watch the footage?" She didn't wait for permission. The screen lit up, body cam footage rolling. Blake's knee on Malcolm's back. The ignored receipt. The store clerk dismissed. The gun drawn. The crowd filming. The sound of a 16-year-old begging for air. Silence fell over the station. Graham looked pale. Blake looked cornered. Collins didn't blink. "The suspect from the electronics store was white," she said coldly. "Early 20s. Red hoodie. No backpack. You ignored that description and went after the only black teenager in the area. That's not policing. That's profiling." Down the hall, the holding room door opened. Malcolm lifted his head, startled. 2 agents stood in the doorway. "Malcolm White," one asked gently. He nodded, heart racing. "FBI," the man said, showing his badge. "You're safe. Come with us." "What's happening?" "You're not in trouble. We're taking you home." They guided him down the corridor. The fluorescent lights flickered above him like a fading nightmare. As they entered the lobby, Malcolm stopped dead. 10 federal agents. Graham standing stiff, eyes uncertain. Blake pale, trembling. And at the center of it all, a tall man in a black suit, his presence commanding the room before he even spoke. The agents stepped aside for him instinctively. The man's eyes swept the room, landing on Malcolm. Recognition hit both of them at once. "Dad," Malcolm whispered. The man's expression broke, just for a heartbeat. He crossed the lobby in 3 strides and took his son by the shoulders, scanning for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you again?" Malcolm's voice faltered. "I'm okay. My shoulder. We'll take care of it," the man said quietly. Then his tone shifted. Strong, controlled, authority rising like tide. "I'm Director Nathan White, Regional Bureau of the FBI." He paused, his hand still resting protectively on Malcolm's shoulder. "And this is my son." The lobby went silent. No one breathed. No one moved. Even Blake's arrogance crumbled into disbelief. Nathan looked around slowly, his voice calm but sharp as glass. 48 minutes ago, my son's phone stopped moving. I have a tracking app. When I saw his location here, I accessed mall footage myself. He turned the tablet to face the officers. I watched everything. The stop, the search, the force, the denial of rights. His tone hardened. My son was buying a birthday gift. He had a receipt, a witness, proof, and you threw him to the ground anyway. Graham tried to speak. Director White, we were responding to no, Nathan said, his voice cutting through him like a blade. You were reacting, not responding. There's a difference. He took a step forward, his presence towering. You racially profiled a child. You assaulted a minor. And you did it in front of witnesses, because you thought there would be no consequences. He looked at Blake directly now. You saw his skin and decided guilt. You mocked his achievements. You denied him a phone call. You drew your weapon on an unarmed boy holding a shopping bag. The room was ice. Blake stammered, I was following protocol. Your protocol, Nathan interrupted, is broken. Behind him, Collins's voice rang out. Sir, full team is ready. Cameras recording. Statements being documented. Nathan nodded once, then turned back to the room. Every officer involved in this incident is now under federal investigation. Body cam footage, dispatch records, and witness statements are being secured as evidence. His tone softened slightly as he looked back at Malcolm. Son, it's over. You're safe now. Malcolm's lip trembled. He managed a small nod. Nathan's hand stayed firm on his shoulder as he turned back to the others. But make no mistake, he said quietly, every word weighted, deliberate. This doesn't end here. There will be accountability. Real accountability. And for the first time that day, the power in the room shifted. The air in the station hung heavy, every sound swallowed by the weight of authority. No one dare move. Nathan White stood in the center of the room, his hand still resting on Malcolm's shoulder, his gaze fixed on Officer Blake. Officer Blake, he said evenly, you placed your knee on my son's back while he begged you to breathe. You mocked his education. You denied him a phone call. You drew your weapon on a 16-year-old boy with a shopping bag. You violated his 4th, 5th, and 14th Amendment rights. His tone was calm, almost too calm, the kind that comes before a storm. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Blake's lips parted, words fumbling out. I was following training. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Your training taught you to racially profile minors? To ignore physical evidence? To humiliate a child in front of 50 witnesses? Blake swallowed hard, color draining from his face. The description matched: black male, hoodie, backpack. Nathan's voice cut through the room like thunder. That's not a description. That's a stereotype. And you used it as a license to abuse. He turned to the rest of the room. This incident is now a federal civil rights investigation. Effective immediately, Officer Blake, you are suspended. Badge and weapon. Now. Blake looked to Graham for help. Graham's eyes dropped to the floor. Now. Nathan repeated, his tone final. Blake's hands trembled as he unpinned his badge, set on the desk, then slowly unholstered his weapon, clearing the chamber before placing it beside the badge. The metallic clink echoed like a verdict. Nathan's voice softened slightly as he turned to Malcolm. Let's get you out of here. Malcolm nodded, silent, but his eyes glistened with something between relief and exhaustion. As they walked toward the exit, Nathan paused, looking back at the silent sea of uniforms. This isn't about one officer, he said quietly. It's about every system that lets this happen and calls it justice. It ends today. Outside, the station lights glared against the falling dusk. Nathan kept his hands steady on Malcolm's shoulder as they stepped into the cooling air. The boy's body trembled, part shock, part disbelief. Nathan stopped beside the car, turning to face him. You did nothing wrong, he said softly. Do you understand me? Malcolm nodded, but the tears came anyway. His father pulled him close, holding him tight for a long moment before whispering, You're safe now. But safety isn't enough. We make this matter. Not just for us, for everyone who can't fight back. Malcolm drew a shaky breath. What happens now? Nathan's gaze hardened. Now we rebuild. Not through revenge, but through change. He looked back at the station. There's still work to do. They turned and walked back inside. The silence that had followed their exit broke instantly into motion. FBI agents filled the space, taking statements, seizing evidence, downloading footage from cameras and dispatch logs. Nathan spoke quietly to Collins, who stood ready with a folder. Status: all secured, she replied. Body cams, witness accounts, chain of custody established. Good, he said. Bring them in. 5 minutes later, the doors opened again. Amanda Fletcher entered first, her face pale but determined, clutching her iPad to her chest. Behind her came Mrs. Dorothy Preston, an older black woman who had spoken up during the arrest, her eyes fierce with moral certainty. And behind them, trembling and pale, was Brian Hughes, the mall security guard whose vague radio call had started everything. Nathan turned toward them. Thank you for coming, he said. What happened today was wrong. What happens next depends on whether we fix it or repeat it. He gestured toward the large monitor on the wall. Watch this. The screen flickered to life, showing the security footage in full. The real thief, white, mid-20s, red hoodie, shoving electronics into a bag. The guard's voice over the radio, misidentifying a completely different person. Then the ripple effect, the patrol car, the stop, the takedown, the crowd. When the video ended, silence filled the room once more. Nathan turned to Hughes. Mr. Hughes, he said evenly, you're not a police officer, so I can't suspend you. But I can make sure you never make the same mistake again. He pulled out his phone, placed it on speaker. Mr. Delgado, Director Nathan White, FBI. I'm calling about your security contract for Riverside Mall. A voice stammered on the other end. Director White. Yes, I saw the news. I'm so sorry. Mr. Hughes here identified my son as a suspect based solely on skin color. Nathan interrupted. He admitted he had no training, just instinct. That's unacceptable. Here's what's going to happen. Every guard you employ will undergo mandatory training in implicit bias, de-escalation, and constitutional rights. Quarterly, not one time. The FBI will help build the program. Yes, sir. Absolutely, the man said quickly. Nathan turned to Hughes. You'll be the first to complete it. Then you'll help teach others what not to do. Sound fair? Hughes nodded through tears. Yes, sir. I'm so sorry. Nathan's voice softened just enough to be human. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to my son. Hughes turned to Malcolm, his voice breaking. I'm sorry, son. I didn't think. I just assumed. Malcolm met his gaze steadily. You assumed I was a criminal, he said quietly. Because of my skin. Hughes nodded, tears streaming. Yes, and I was wrong. Then do better, Malcolm said softly. Learn better. Be better. The words hung in the air. Not angry, not vengeful, just true. And for the first time all day, the room began to feel a little less heavy, as if something long overdue had finally shifted. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the Riverside Community Center. Rows of folding chairs filled the hall, every seat taken. Parents, students, police officers, and local reporters packed the room until there was standing space only. The air buzzed with quiet tension, the kind that comes when a town knows it's about to confront itself. On stage sat Director Nathan White, Sergeant Graham, Mayor Elizabeth Crawford, and Malcolm. His shoulder was bandaged, his face still bruised, but his eyes were steady now, no longer afraid, just awake. Mayor Crawford stepped up to the podium, her voice clear, resonant. 2 weeks ago, she began, something happened in this city that we can't ignore. We saw it. We filmed it. We shared it. But now we have to face it. She paused, letting the silence settle. This isn't about one officer or one mistake. It's about a system that let it happen. She turned toward Nathan. Director, White has been working with us to create real change. Not statements, action. Nathan stood, his presence quiet but commanding. 2 weeks ago, he said, my son was racially profiled, assaulted, and detained without cause. If I hadn't been who I am, that story might have ended very differently. He scanned the faces in the crowd, some nodding, some tearful, some still defensive. Justice, he continued, should never depend on who your father is. It should be a right for everyone. The room erupted in applause, long and heavy, echoing off the walls. When the noise settled, Nathan continued. Here's what's changing. He held up a document. Mandatory implicit bias training for all police and security. not once, but quarterly. The FBI will help provide it. Second, a community oversight board, with real disciplinary power, chaired by Officer Jason Reed. Reed stood from the audience, surprise written on his face. Applause again, hesitant at first, then stronger. Third, body cameras for every officer. Footage automatically uploaded, publicly accessible within 72 hours. And finally, Nathan's voice dropped, filled with quiet conviction. A partnership between the FBI and Riverside PD to create a model de-escalation program. One that starts with empathy, not fear. He stepped back. These aren't suggestions. They're requirements. And they start now. The applause this time was louder, not just polite but real. Graham rose, his expression humble. On behalf of Riverside Police, he said into the mic, I apologize to Malcolm White and to this community. We failed. Our job is to protect everyone equally. We didn't. Officer Blake has resigned. He's enrolled in a restorative justice program. And if he completes it, he'll work with youth programs to teach others what not to do. He took a deep breath. But that's not enough. The system failed, and we're fixing it. Mayor Crawford returned to the mic. Malcolm, she said gently, would you like to say anything? Malcolm hesitated, then stood. His voice, when it came, was soft but sure. I was just shopping, he said. But they saw a threat. He looked out over the crowd, the officers, the parents, the students, his words landing like stones in still water. Don't let that be your kid's story. 21 words. That was all. But they cut through the silence like truth. The room erupted, a standing ovation, raw and human. Amanda Fletcher in the third row wiped her eyes. Mrs. Preston raised her fist. Even Sergeant Graham bowed his head. When the applause faded, Mayor Crawford's voice returned, trembling slightly with emotion. There's something else you should know, she said. Malcolm's story has gone viral. The hashtag Justice for Malcolm has become a national conversation. Over 2 million videos, parents having the talk with their children, Black parents teaching survival, white parents finally understanding why that talk exists at all. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as phones lit up, screens glowing with feeds full of empathy and outrage. This conversation, the mayor said, is happening across America. Because of what happened here. Because Malcolm spoke up. Because Miss Fletcher spoke up. Because people refused to look away. Down near the front, Officer Reed rose again, his voice quiet but firm. Malcolm, he said, I want to apologize personally. I should have done more that day. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't stop it. Malcolm studied him, calm but sharp. You were uncomfortable, he said. I could see it. But being uncomfortable isn't the same as doing something. Reed nodded, guilt softening his face. You're right. That's why I'm chairing the oversight board. I want to make sure this never happens again. He extended a hand. Malcolm looked at it, then at his father. Nathan gave a small nod. The boy took Reed's hand, firm but not angry. Then let's work together, Malcolm said. Reed's voice cracked. Thank you. I won't let you down. Nathan put a hand on his son's shoulder. I'm proud of you, he said quietly, for shaking his hand. Malcolm frowned slightly. For what? For giving him a chance, his father said. That's how change starts. One person choosing better. Across the room, a teenage girl held up her phone, recording. Malcolm, she said shyly, I'm doing the TikTok challenge. Can I ask, what would you tell other kids who look like you? Malcolm thought for a moment, then looked straight into the camera. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong, he said. You do. And when they try to make you small, stand tall anyway. The girl's eyes shimmered. Thank you, she whispered. She turned and hit post. Nathan smiled faintly. That's going to get 1 million views. Malcolm exhaled, eyes on the crowd. Good, he said softly. Maybe it'll help someone. And for the first time since that day at the mall, Malcolm allowed himself to believe it might. 3 months later, the campus of MIT glowed beneath the early fall sun. Students hurried across the courtyard, backpacks slung over shoulders, laughter echoing through the glass buildings. Inside a small dorm room on the 3rd floor, Malcolm White stood among half-unpacked boxes. He reached into one and pulled out a navy hoodie. That hoodie, the one that had started it all. It had been washed a dozen times, the stains gone, but the memory still clung to the fabric. He ran his fingers across it, smiling faintly. His roommate walked in, tossing a notebook onto his bed. "Nice hoodie," he said casually. "Where'd you get it?" Malcolm paused for a moment, then smiled. "Long story," he replied. "Remind me to tell you about the day I learned the difference between power and justice." The boy laughed, unaware of the weight behind the words. As Malcolm folded the hoodie neatly into his drawer, the scene shifted. Officer Blake stood at a podium in a crowded police conference room, his uniform replaced by a plain shirt, sleeves rolled up. On the screen behind him, bold words read, "Implicit Bias Training, Restorative Justice Program." His voice trembled as he spoke. "I used to think I was doing my job," he said to the room of young recruits. "Then I saw the body cam footage of what I did to that boy, to Malcolm White, and I realized I wasn't protecting anyone. I was protecting my assumptions." He paused, his throat tight. "The badge doesn't give you power over people. It gives you a duty to see them." The room was silent. He swallowed, eyes wet. "That day I failed. But I'm learning, and I'm asking all of you not to repeat my mistake." Cut to Officer Reed, now in plain clothes, sitting at the head of a long table labeled Riverside Oversight Board. Community leaders, parents, and activists filled the seats. They reviewed footage, debated policies, and signed new reforms into law. Reed spoke quietly but firmly. "Accountability isn't punishment," he said. "It's proof we can still do better." Then a wide shot of the Riverside Mall, brighter now, cleaner, alive again. A new sign at the entrance read, "All are welcome." Inside, security guards in new uniforms went through training exercises, learning de-escalation, mediation, and empathy. The same mall that had once been a stage for injustice had become a classroom for change. Nathan White's voice carried softly over the montage, almost like a father's reflection and a leader's vow. "Justice isn't revenge," he said. "It's restoration. It's growth. It's what happens when courage meets accountability." The screen shifted again, videos of parents across the country talking to their children. Hashtag Justice for Malcolm appeared in bold letters, followed by thousands of short clips, fathers explaining the talk, mothers filming heartfelt messages, teenagers standing in front of their phones saying, "I belong here. I matter." Back MIT, Malcolm sat by the window of his dorm, writing in a notebook. Outside, the city pulsed with light and life. His father's voice echoed in his mind. "Safety isn't enough. Make it matter." Malcolm looked out over the skyline, whispering, "I will." A soft piano began to play as text faded onto the screen. This is what transformation looks like. Not perfection, progress. Not revenge, restoration. One choice at a time. One person at a time. One story at a time. Malcolm's voice, quiet and resolute, spoke the final line. "Justice shouldn't depend on who your father is. It should be a right for everyone." The music swelled. The screen faded to black. Then, one last question appeared, white letters over silence. "What will you do when you see injustice?"